Good evening and welcome to the show. Before I begin, apologies because this is one of those out and about episode recordings. So you're going to be hearing things like air conditioners, cars driving in the background, and people having conversations. So with that out of the way, let's dive straight in. At the previous episode, if I remember correctly, because I think there's been a 2 day gap, we went over we looked at the question whether you should beg people to open your email newsletters, because that seems to be accepted practice here in Niger. Because I'm a member of some communities, and you have people always begging, like, I've sent out my email newsletter, so please check your inboxes, please open, those sorts of things. And so we're running a series for the next couple of days on what's the most appropriate way to set up your newsletter to get people to open, and whether it's a good idea to beg people. And yesterday's episode, I think I broke it down into three sections, three questions rather, that we have to consider. Number one, what's an email newsletter? Number two, how do you get people to open your email newsletter? Number three, is it a bad thing if people refuse to open your email newsletter? And yes, that final question is something we have to address, because there's this idea that if people don't open your email newsletter, then somehow it's a bad thing. So we're going to bite the bullet and ask that question to see whether it is indeed a bad thing that people are refusing to open your email newsletter. So in the previous episode, I think I mentioned that email newsletters are a tool for community building. You're using email to blast out messages regarding topical things in the industry, things about your product or your service, updates, business updates, things like that. And the whole idea is for relationship building, so that people get to know you, to like you, and to trust you, so that when you do have something to sell, and you send that message to people on your email newsletter, they will buy. So it makes it easier to cultivate a buying relationship, because it builds likability, trust. It shows that you're credible and you're competent, and of course, it also plays up awareness on top of mind, because if you're sending out these emails every week or every month or every other month, then at that cadence, people have a reason to remember that, who you are, that you're in business, what you offer, and how you can be of value. So that's what we did in the previous episode. So let's move on to today's sub question. So now that we're done with number one, which is what's an email newsletter, we'll move straight to number two and examine old school, traditional, tried and tested ways of getting people to open your newsletter. And this also can be broken down into several subsets. But for now, we're just going to look at three of them. Number one, to get people to open your newsletter, traditionally, you want to be sure that you have the right audience in the first place, or that you're talking about something relevant. Because if you have the wrong audience, or you have an audience of people and they think your message is irrelevant, they might open the first, maybe the second, but they will not open the third, and they might block you from the fourth, fifth, and sixth. Then there's also, let's see what else. Okay, make sure you have the right audience or relevance. And then there's number two. This is the idea of permission. You have to get people to opt in. And that's where this whole thing of lead magnets come about. That is something that you put out over the internet, and because people want to get that valuable resource, they put their email address. They put their email address, they put their phone number, and that is some way of getting permission. And I guess that's okay, it's an industry standard, but you want to be absolutely sure that people have given their permission to be on the newsletter, because sometimes people want to get that valuable resource, the lead magnet, so they give you their email address, and then when your first newsletter comes in, maybe they read the first one, and then they ignore the second, and then they block the third. So permission, absolutely important. And then the last one is, it's called different things according to which business professional you're talking to. There's lead nurturing, there's relationship nurturing, or there's engagement campaigns. But basically, it's the idea that you are sending out these emails at the right cadence, with the right subject matters, with the right call to action. And because of that, people are engaged with the emails that you send. Because if your emails are disparate, different topics, neither here nor there, they don't address the main issue, your cadence is off, you send an email today, maybe you don't send an email the next time, you skip 2 or 3 episodes, and then you're back again. I mean, these are things that lead to a break in the experience and cause people to ignore over time. So those are the three things that we have to pay attention to get people to open our newsletters. Number one, the right audience. Be sure that we have something relevant. Number two, we want to be sure that we've gotten permission. Number three, we want to be sure that our lead nurturing, relationship nurturing, or our engagement campaigns are on point. And if you're able to achieve all these things, then you should be on the right track to making sure that your newsletter, sorry, excuse me, it's that time of the year. Then your newsletter has all that it needs to be effective. So we've already done 5 minutes. Because of that, I'm only going to tackle one aspect of this breakdown today, and then tomorrow, hopefully, we'll be able to move into numbers 2 and 3. So the first one, right audience or relevance. Now, who is the right audience? Now, the right audience is relative. It depends on your subject matter expertise, and you should be looking for people who are interested in those sorts of things. For instance, you have me. I put out business content. I used to have the blog. I don't write there anymore. I think I did close to 300 blog posts and then I stopped. All my focus is on the podcast right now. And so I put out business content. There's the podcast. I write exclusively on sales and marketing related things. And recently I've been including a call to action for people to subscribe to my email newsletter. Well, it's not really an email newsletter. It's more of like a text newsletter because I don't want to get your email addresses. I prefer to build community over the phone. So I have a Telegram group where you subscribe and we get to explore some more topics that have been addressed over here on the podcast. So I put out calls to action, people to DM me, to send me messages, so you can see that the permission component is there. But bottom line is this: number one, I'm looking for people who might be interested in things that I have subject matter expertise in, and that is how I know that I have the right audience. Now, the right audience does not include, and I will repeat, the right audience does not include friends. Because you're setting out in business, you want a successful newsletter, so you go and hassle all your friends to jump on the email newsletter. It does not include friends, because your friends might be interested in what you do, might not. But chances are a large number of these people are not going to be interested, and that's the reason why they are not opening. Now, the right audience does not include family members. There's some of my family members who cannot be bothered with sales and marketing related stuff. And in fact, some of them think I'm too opinionated when it comes to business things and that I like money too much. So, of course, if I try and force these people to be on my email newsletter, guess what? They are not going to open my email newsletter. The right audience does not also include your associates at work, because if you're a wedding planner, perhaps all your associates are already married, and so because of that, they don't give two hoots about what's going on in the event and wedding planning space. Or maybe you sell accessories for knitting and crochets and stuff like that. Your associates at work, maybe they're all football people, or they prefer to hang out and eat suya and drink beer rather than crochet. Now, the right audience does not include bot audiences. For those of you who are still trying to buy audiences from companies for your Instagram handle or for your email newsletter, it does not include bot audiences, because sometimes bot audiences are not real people. They are bots. Bots are not going to engage. Bots, as in short for online robots. Let's see what else. And then, of course, bot audiences, the person just wants the money. So they're going to take your money, your tens of thousands or your hundreds of thousands of naira, and you're going to have fake views and subscribers for a while, but there's going to be no engagement. It's going to hurt your deliverability. So it does not include bot audiences. That is also, bought in the sense that you paid for them, and then bought as in BOT, online robots. So these are examples of the kinds of people that do not include when we're talking about having the right audience. So stop hassling your friends, your family members, your associates, audiences that you have paid for, your church members. Stop hassling them to join your email newsletter. If you are a wedding planner, then your email newsletter should be full of people who are brides to be, or people who are in love with the wedding industry space, who want to know the latest and the greatest trends or ideas about planning weddings for cheap, or planning sophisticated weddings, or weddings that might trend. I'm sure you get the idea. There's no point in forcing your male cousins to be there if your male cousins are much more interested in football and Call of Duty and other online games and stuff like that. So so it's the same thing. If I try to force my friends, my family members, I talk to the whole wide world, I try and get them on my email newsletter. Of course, people are not going to open because they are not interested. So that's the first criteria, that we're done with the right audience. And number two, we should be able to get into permission, and then how you create engaging emails when people get on your email list. But this first part is absolutely important, because if you start off with the wrong audience, then your opens are going to be extremely low. And then you'll have to beg people to open because people are not interested in the first place. So thank you very much for listening to today's episode. I'm your host, Tavishima. Thanks for listening to the Sales for the Nigerian Business Person podcast. I'll catch you guys at the next episode.